What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are previewing Cincinnati ahead of the 2025 season. If you like this content, please subscribe, leave a comment, or just like the video. You'd be shocked how much even just a simple like goes towards getting this in front of other people as we try to grow. So thank you if you've done that. If you have any feedback, please let me know. We're recording this early on June 7th, but let's dive into Cincinnati. Brief look at last year before we take a look at this year's stats. Cincinnati, little bit of a rough year. Efficiency metrics indicate a pretty average team for the most part. This team was 54th on offense and 63rd on defense overall. Their biggest area of concern was their pass rush, which shouldn't be super surprising. This was a team that overall had a lot of players get injured, but the pass rush was decimated really from the preseason. They had some injuries that happened even in fall camp. So they fall to 5-7, but it wasn't without some bright spots. When you look at the efficiency metrics, Brennan Sorsby played fairly well. The pass game actually had a lot of success, and the offensive line was certainly a position of strength for this team. Defensively, their back end was the best asset they had. They had a very good secondary. The unfortunate part moving forward is a lot of those two units are gone. The offensive line has a lot of turnover, as does the secondary that lost 3 of their top starters. So moving forward, what do we expect? Well, Scott Satterfield is now in year 3. He's led them to an 8-16 record, which is sort of a far cry from where we were Luke Fickell's final couple of years in the college football playoff. But Satterfield does have some success. He previously has coached at Louisville and Appalachian State. We just need to see another step forward because you start 3-9. Okay, rebuilding program. You're coming from Luke Fickell, or going from Luke Fickell to Satterfield is what it is. Then you go to 5-7. You need to make a bowl in year 3, especially in the Big 12. As far as diving into the schedule, they were close last year. I mean, they lost to Pittsburgh by 1 point. They lost to Texas Tech by 3, West Virginia by 7, TCU by 7, a bunch of single-digit games. They were only blown out a couple times. They had double-digit losses to Colorado, Iowa State, and Kansas State. But with all that said, some of their wins were close. You beat Towson by 18 points. 38-20, you allowed 20 points to Towson. Sure, you took your foot off the gas, but it's a little concerning. You beat Miami, Ohio by 11. I know that's it's a rivalry game. It's always competitive, or at least maybe more than you'd think. But then UCF by 6 points, Arizona State by 10 points. Those are your marquee games. So it just leaves a little bit to be desired. You had the highs, you had the lows. The big thing is now, can we see a step forward? Well, the coaching staff, Brad Glenn is back, 3rd season as OC, previously a pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach for Virginia Tech. It doesn't matter a ton here. Satterfield is an offensive mind. He does call the plays as their head coach. This is sort of a spread offense that uses a lot of RPOs and zone reads. This offense is best with a mobile signal caller. We saw that with Sorsby last year. Efficient when he's able to execute the offense. He got a little banged up at times, which hurt. Defensive coordinator Tyson Veit is back. He took over after he was the linebackers coach of Iowa State. Cincinnati's defense did improve from 124th to 63rd, so that was very good improvement in year 1 under a new defensive system. We'll see if they can do that again. But let's take a look at talent acquisition for Cincinnati, recruiting and transfer portal-wise. This team is towards the bottom of the Big 12. You're going to see a lot of variance year in, year out with the Big 12. You know, they're 51st last year, which is 8th in recruiting. This year, they're 61st, which is 14th. What we can say is they're not exactly towards the top. And this was a team making a jump from a lower level of competition to the Big 12, so you'd expect some hiccups at first. Their transfer portal acquisitions are also fairly middling. 52nd this year, 41st the year prior, and then they were 43rd in 2023. So they're a little bit behind the 8 ball as far as acquiring talent goes. And I think retention is going to be pretty good with this team. You also have to recognize, all right, they had a coaching change, so this 46% retention. When you change coaches that recently, sometimes it's just hard to retain those players. 86% last year is good. So talent is okay, not good, not horrible. We'll see how they can develop that moving forward. But let's pivot this and move towards the actual roster this year, what we have on the field for Cincinnati. Here is our 2-deep depth chart. You can find this in the Discord. We have the players listed. Transfers are in yellow. Year they are in school next to that, followed by snaps they played the last 2 years, what recruit they were in terms of a star, and then a value score, which is first looking at your recruiting, then it looks at the play on the field. The more you play, the less it factors in that recruiting, trying to give you an overall value score. Think of 50 as your average mark. Anything above that is better. Going up through the 90s would be your elite All-American type players. And then below that, probably shouldn't be on the field, but there's a couple of them for all these teams. Starting with QB, Brennan Sorsby is back, the former Indiana transfer. He is 6'3", 228, completed 64% of his passes for 2,812 yards. That was 7.2 yards per attempt. 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 8 big-time throws, 13 turnover-worthy plays. That's a little bit of a concern, but most of these numbers were a step forward compared to 2023. And he does execute the Satterfield offense better than most. He has good mobility, 447 rushing yards, was 4.3 yards per carry. Only 17 sacks. That was about a 15% pressure to sack ratio, which is moderate. 2.82 seconds to throw, also moderate. And he finished as the 53rd most efficient quarterback in college football last year. A little better than I thought he would finish. And I think you can expect to step forward in another season. The only real concern you have, I guess, isn't even him. It has more to do with the surrounding cast. That O-line was very experienced last year. They're losing quite a bit from it, and they lose almost their entire receiving core. The only receiver back who's played a snap is Barry Jackson Jr., at least a snap with Cincinnati. So what does this whole new cast of situational players on the offensive line and receiver look like? I'm not sure. The QB room, extending this forward, they have a 4-star redshirt freshman, Samaj Jones. He's a dual threat. I'm wondering if he beats out Brady Lichtenberg at any time, who's an older veteran but has been the long-term backup. We just haven't seen him. I'm not sure that he is particularly good. In the few instances he's been on the field, it hasn't looked particularly good, but having a 4-star behind Brennan Sorsby potentially answers that question. At running back, they lose their stud Corey Kiner, but they paper over that in the transfer portal with Tawi Walker from Wisconsin. Originally a JUCO kid, goes to Oklahoma, doesn't play as much as he'd like, transfers to Wisconsin. He's 5'9", 218. He rushed 190 times for 864 yards. That was 4.5 yards per carry, caught 11 passes. He did force 45 missed tackles, which was pretty solid, but only 2.95 yards after contact. He's a little up and down, but I think he is capable enough of playing at Cincinnati and filling those Corey Kiner shoes, especially because you have some other backs that you could potentially look at too. Evan Pryor, the former Ohio State 4-star, flashed in a small sample. He's 5'10", 198, rushed 56 times for 418 yards. That was 7.5 yards per carry, caught 15 passes. Far more efficient than Walker, 5 yards per carry after contact. That's elite. I think best case scenario, you use these guys in tandem with each other. That's how Wisconsin wanted to use Tawi Walker anyway. It just, Ches Malusi suffered another injury, so they were forced to use him more. But ultimately, this backfield is probably going to function at max output with Pryor and Walker. Behind them, they have Manny Covey and Chance Williams. They both played a handful of snaps last year. Covey is 5'10", 190, had 8 catches, so maybe a third down explosive back in his future. Williams is a Grambling State transfer. He's 5'8", 190. I don't think we see a lot of him. But if you need to, he played a couple snaps and looked decent. So your running back room is in a solid place, all things considered. At wide receiver, all right, so they lose Xavier Henderson. That is the biggest loss, but Jamoy Mays, Tony Johnson, Sterling Burkhalter, Aaron Turner, Tyron Smith, some of them graduated, some of them transferred. And because of all that, all those departures, the only guy who's back is Barry Jackson Jr. Only played a handful of snaps. He's 5'11", 193, caught 3 passes. Basically, he has a chance to be your slot receiver because everyone else they added, at least among the transfers, profiles as a boundary receiver, starting with Cyrus Allen, comes in from Texas A&M, 6 feet, 178. He had a couple of years of starting experience at Louisiana Tech before he goes to A&M, where he had an injury-shortened season, but he played out wide 69% of the time, 1.51 yards per route on 18 catches. Cyrus Allen should be able to play at this level of competition, no problem. He was playing at A&M before the injury, so no real question there. I think he starts. Caleb Goody comes in from Colorado State. He is 6'1", 170, caught 21 passes for 428 yards. He played out wide 85% of the time with 1.92 yards per route, which is solid. They then bring in Jeff Caldwell from Lindenwood. He's 6'5", 198, 53 catches, 1,032 yards, 11 touchdowns. Played out wide 83% of the time with a 2.99 yards per route. It's tough when you look at these FCS receivers jumping up to FBS and especially the Big 12, but he was productive enough where I think he could probably do it. And last, Noah Jennings, 6'1", 188, 884 yards and 72 catches over the last 2 years. Played out wide 92% of the time, 1.63 yards per route. That was at Charleston Southern, so not quite as productive as a guy like Jeff Caldwell. So I think Noah Jennings is probably a depth piece. But even if you just look at Allen, Goody, Caldwell, that's probably your 3 starters. Then you have Jennings as a potential backup. You have Barry Jackson as a potential backup. The rest of the unit is completely unknown. You have Cale Woodburn and Dakari Anderson in their second seasons. Neither of them played. You have a 2025 freshman 3-star, Gianni Contosis, who's been, Brad Glenn's been hyping him up this spring. I don't know what we're going to get out of the freshman. He's a 3-star, but he is a little bit of a higher recruit than Woodburn or Anderson. So maybe he has to play. All this to say the receiving unit is very unproven, and I think there's a good chance it takes a slight step back unless Cyrus Allen or someone can return to form from that 2023 season. However, they probably are just going to run their offense through tight end because they have a number of these players that can play. So maybe they move to more 12 personnel. Ohio State transfer. He's back. Joe Royer played last year with Cincinnati. Breakout season. Former 4-star. He's 6'5", 255, 50 catches, 522 yards. Played in and out of the slot. Blocking numbers weren't fantastic, but he did line up in the slot quite often. 1.48 yards per route is good for a tight end. He's basically an every down player. Then they get back 93 snaps from Gavin Grover. He's 6'6", 250. Good blocker last year. Didn't have a catch. They get back redshirt freshman Devin Zahersky, who's getting a lot of hype this offseason. And then they added an Ohio State transfer, Patrick Gerd. Now, he was a walk-on, and he profiles more as a fullback or an H-back for this offense. But still, you have some options to potentially use some different personnel groupings like 12, a fullback, whatever it may be. Perhaps Cincinnati does not need to use as much 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets as they did last year. To the offensive line, they return 2 starters. Fortunately, one of them is their center, Gavin Gerhardt. He started the last couple seasons. Actually, he's now entering his 4th year starting. Last year, he allowed 12 QB pressures, 1 QB hit, and 2 sacks. Very good in the run game. He's a stalwart up front, manning your center position. That is solid. And I'm starting at center because I think the interior is more secure than the tackle position. So we're going to work our way inside out. At guard, number of options. First of all, they add Tarantayo from Ball State. He's a multiple-year starter, 2 years to be specific. He played tackle at Ball State, but he profiles more as a guard. Last year, 758 snaps, 16 QB pressures, elite run blocker. So Tayo, I think, is going to start at one of the guard spots. And from there, they have a couple options. Evan Tangistal is back. He played 127 snaps across all 3 interior positions last year. He's a sophomore now, so he played as a young player. Very strong as a run blocker. Pass blocking needs a little work. But, you thrust a true freshman outside not outside, but all 3 interior positions. It can't be easy to play all 3 in a limited capacity and still put up good numbers. So Tangistal is a candidate to play one of the guard spots. They also have been using DeAndre Buford inside and out the last couple seasons. He's the Kentucky transfer, the former 4-star. Last year, he played 728 snaps. A couple of those came at guard, 184 to be specific. But I'm not sure what they're going to do with him because, first of all, you're using him at multiple positions. He has yet to even reach average play. Last year, he allowed 14 QB pressures, and he was a below-average run blocker. So do they use him at guard? Do they use him at tackle? Do they not use him at all? He still needs to develop. He's been in the college for 4 seasons, and he hasn't hit average yet in a season where he played a significant number of snaps. But at least that gives you options. At tackle, so Buford, he could play tackle as well, but they also bring in a couple transfers here. Joe Cotton from South Dakota and Nolan Latulipe from Albany. Cotton is the more likely starter. He's 6'7", 310. He played elite football in the FCS, only 11 QB pressures allowed last year, and he was a 2-starter there. Latulipe is also 6'7", but he's listed at 281. Playing at Albany is a little different than South Dakota. 2-year FCS starter, but he was in the 45th percentile last year in terms of production. So I'm thinking we're looking at more of a depth piece, potential development piece, largely because he has a 6'7" frame. But there's a couple other guys. Xavier Lozowicki was a transfer last year from Maine. He played 5 snaps. Shouldn't be super surprising. He's still there, I guess, if they developed him enough. He hasn't been mentioned at all this spring, so it's not promising. But a couple depth pieces, redshirt junior Ethan Green, redshirt freshman Jake Wheelock. Both of them are decent recruits. Otherwise, little's been mentioned about anyone else. I think the offensive line is likely to take a slight step back due to the new faces and the lack of depth. For example, an injury at tackle could be catastrophic for this team, but it's not in a bad spot. I think you're dealing with, at the worst, an average offensive line unit just because that interior is so strong. Defensive line, they lose Eric Phillips off the edge, a couple other edge pieces. That unit wasn't good anyway. They were 109th, so they needed to remake it. They sort of did that. Rob Jackson is the main returner. He played 364 snaps. Below average pass rusher, only 9 pressures on those, but he's also 270. I think his best position might be like 5 technique. Anyway, they add Jalen White McLean from Old Dominion. He's 254, 11 QB pressures and 510 snaps, but he was very good in the run game. Overall, that added him or brought him all the way to above average play, so he's probably going to play a bit. They also returned Eastern Michigan transfer Micah Coleman, who got injured in summer. He missed all of last season, but he played multiple seasons as a starter with Eastern Michigan, 445 snaps and 23 with 30 QB pressures. The reason he wasn't even better is he missed 8 tackles, which was 20% of his attempts. If he improved those even a little bit, he would be an elite pass rusher. But I think he's probably going to play some this year. Finally, a couple other guys. Sophomore Marquez Parker played 113 snaps. CJ McCray of Virginia Tech joined the team. I have no idea what we're getting with him. He got benched last year after he was a pretty good player on a limited role, 355 snaps in 22, 227 in 23. Then last year he got benched. So what do we get out of McCray? He's a black box. We don't know. It's hard for the edge group to be worse, especially with the injuries, but it's still not the most inspiring unit on paper with the low-level transfers and players coming off injuries. We'll see what we get. Defensive tackle, this is a reason to be optimistic. Dante Corleone is back, and he's going to ease the pressure off some of those edge guys, 6'1", 320. He's now started for 3 seasons with elite production. Interestingly, his efficiency has dropped for 3 straight years now, but he still logged 27 QB pressures, good run defense. I think you can attribute some of the slow start last year, which hurt his efficiency, to the medical issue in the offseason. Basically took away all of his offseason. He didn't play in week 1. When he finally got back into form, Corleone was awesome. He's been awesome every time he's been on the field outside of that sort of slow start. I'm optimistic we're getting the full Dante Corleone. He's 320 pounds. He's an elite interior pass rusher. This guy has plenty of NFL potential. I think he's arguably the best player on the defense, and maybe that shouldn't even arguable. He just flat out might be. Behind him, they returned basically all of their rotational guys. Kamari Burns played 133 snaps. Cam Rutherford played 133. He's a transfer from Arkansas Pine Bluff, but he was still decent enough. Harris Adams is back after 99 snaps. He's a former Southeast Missouri State transfer. The benefit of these players, they're all around average. Generally, they're all playing a little bit above average. They all have their concerns. But all we need out of them is to spell Corleone once in a while or provide a compliment to Corleone. None of them have to be the hero playmaker on the defense, which I think is positive. They're all experienced and all have been with the program now, so they should know how to play alongside Corleone to maximize this. It's the edge group I have a little more concern with compared to the interior. At linebacker, they do lose Jared Bartlett, but they return Jack Dingle, Jake Golday, and Jonathan Thompson. All of them have played a lot. You're seeing at least 3 linebackers on the field with Cincinnati. They play more of your like 3-4 defense. Dingle played the most of these guys, 474 snaps, but he was actually the least efficient. He's a 2-year starter. Last year, only 38 tackles, 0 tackles for loss. He also missed 9 tackles, which was 18% of his opportunities. He also gave up 19 catches on 23 targets for 302 yards and 2 scores. So he was a brutal coverage player. I think there's a chance you just see him play a little bit less because there's so many players that have a little bit of experience. Golday is a transfer from Central Arkansas. At least last year, he's been with the program already. He made an immediate impact. His first year with Cincinnati, he was second on the team with 58 tackles and 7 tackles for loss. That was on 453 snaps. Also good in coverage, 78% completion percentage, but 86 scoreless yards, 1 PBU. Awesome player. Then we get to Jonathan Thompson. He was 4th on the team in tackles, 49, 5 tackles for loss. That was on just 379 snaps. Good in coverage as well. 78% completion for 176 scoreless yards, 3 PBUs. Over 600 snaps the last 2 years. But it's not even that. They have a bunch of young players, sophomores, redshirt sophomores that dabbled on the field last year. Sophomore Simeon Coleman, 238 snaps. Sophomore Monte Whedon, 121 snaps. Redshirt sophomore Brian Sims III, 146 snaps. All of them had flashes. So this is probably the best position on their defense, at least so far. They're just replacing a lot in the secondary, and the edge group is a little uncertain. Linebacker, pretty experienced, pretty good high-end talent. I think this is the strength of their defense. In the secondary, they lose 3 starters, 3 good starters too. Jordan Young, Derek Canteen, Josh Minkins. It's going to be hard to replace them. First boundary corner that's likely to start is Idaho transfer Omani Arnold. He joined the team last year. He played 372 snaps with Cincinnati. A little bit of a gambler, 56% completion percentage is solid, but 253 yards and 4 scores in your coverage isn't ideal. He's still probably going to start on the boundary. They do have 3 transfers. One of them is a boundary corner. 2 of them are slots. Matthew McDoom is the other potential boundary guy. Played with Coastal Carolina last year, and he honestly might have been the best corner in the Sun Belt. 37% completion percentage in his coverage for 259 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks, 10 PBUs. That is incredible production for Matthew McDoom. Think he starts immediately. Christian Harrison from Tennessee is probably the most likely to man the slot. He played 213 of his 295 snaps from that alignment last year. Really good run defender. Allowed a 75% completion for 146 scoreless yards. Barnes is also a slot corner. He comes in from New Mexico State. This is Taden Barnes. He played 847 snaps, but he allowed 45 catches for 579 yards, 5 touchdowns. Did have 2 interceptions and 4 PBUs, but not sure that's going to quite translate to the Big 12. Harrison probably the most likely to play, with Barnes being more of a depth piece. And the rest of the depth behind these corners is not proven. You have a redshirt freshman in Zay Johnson with 11 snaps. Willie Goodwin played 3 snaps. So hopefully your starting group is fine. It's just going to be a little bit tough to replace all the guys you lost, and depth is definitely going to be a little bit more thin. At safety, there's a few players they might use. Antoine Peak Jr. played 368 snaps. I think he is entrenched as a starter. He was 3rd on the team in tackles with 56, only allowed 7 catches for 68 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And he took over starting duties late in the year. He started first in week 7 against UCF, which was an awesome game for him, by the way. So he's a potential starter. The other safety position is up for grabs a little bit, and one of these guys might kick into nickel too. Logan Wilson played 285 snaps. Jaquan Starks played 296. Wilson has started a lot in his career, 2 years with North Texas before coming to Cincinnati last year. He was a little above average, 56% completion percentage allowed for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 5 PBUs. He started only 1 game last year, moved in and out of the slot. He's a potential slot corner, potential safety. We'll see what they get. Sanks enters his sophomore season after, here we go, of course. My apologies to the police. I'm sure you guys can hear this. Seems to happen every show. It is 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and it's an ambulance this time. All right, as for Sanks, the other player who had a lot of safety snaps, 296, 42 tackles, only allowed 7 receptions for 120 scoreless yards, 1 PBU. Gives you options. To bolster that unit, they also added Xavier Williams from Middle Tennessee State. He was originally a quarterback, played with Charlotte and UCF, but then transitioned positions. Last year was his first year starting, played shockingly well. Who knew he was going to lead Middle Tennessee State in tackles with 77? Decent in coverage, needs a little work here, 68% completion, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1 PBU. Ultimately, the safety position I feel a little bit better about than corner, which makes sense. They're just losing more at corner. At kicker, they go out and add a Charlotte transfer, Stephen Rusnak, who was perfect on 25 extra points, perfect on 11 field goals, perfect on 3 attempts beyond 50 yards, 21st most efficient kicker in college football. And the only reason he's not higher is sample size is pretty small. But man, guy didn't miss, not once. Perfect last year. Should help your special teams unit a lot. That was 87th in the country. So that's a benefit to Cincinnati. Let's go to the schedule and talk about what they face this year, because I think there's strong points to the roster and weak points. A lot is going to come down to who they face. So Pulling up the schedule here. Non-conference should be 2-1. The Nebraska game it's listed as a versus. It's technically at Arrowhead, which is basically like a home game for Nebraska almost. I mean, it should be more of like a Nebraska home game anyway. It's at a neutral. Northwestern State's FCS. Bowling Green is losing a lot of production. Then you have your bye. Hopefully you're sitting at 2-1 before you head into Big 12 play. As far as the Big 12 schedule for Cincinnati goes, it's going to be a little easier than most. They don't play Texas Tech or Arizona State. Those are two of the best teams in the conference. They still do have to travel to Utah and TCU. They get Baylor at home. Those would be the other teams I rank at the top of the conference. But they face a lot of the bottom end. You play BYU, who's replacing a lot of their roster, QB problem there. Arizona was a disaster last year. They have not made a lot of strides. Oklahoma State, they have to change QBs. We'll see what happens with them. UCF has a coaching change. Kansas lost almost their entire offense aside from QB. There's a chance this team is favored in like 6 games, 7 games. Really what it's going to come down to is how much can they put together on the offensive line, the receiver room, and the secondary, and how are they going to match up with these other rebuilding teams? Because I think you're pretty clearly an underdog against Nebraska, Utah, TCU, and Baylor. That's only 4 games. The other ones, you're clear favored in a couple of them, especially Bowling Green and Northwestern State. But, I mean, once you hit like Kansas, Iowa State, those games are going to be close to pick'ems. So how Cincinnati does in these close games is going to be important for their ultimate end-of-the-year win total. I'm semi-interested in this team towards the over. We'll see what happens, but let me know what you think and who you want to see next. Otherwise, we're out for today. Good luck, everyone. We will see you again next time.